Hi guys, and thank you so much for joining me. Today's video is sponsored by my coffee. Hi, if you're new here, I'm Kat and I like to talk about true crime, conspiracies and all sorts of related things. In today's video, let's talk about LeeAnna Warner and her disappearance, but before we get started, just a quick disclaimer: all the information I'm giving you in today's video is already in the public domain. I also don't mean any disrespect to anyone I talk about in the video. This is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Thank you so much. This is a message for all my subscribers. Guys, thank you so much for all the continuous support you are showing me. I have a really huge favor to ask you. This channel received a community guideline strike last year because of a video I made about the current situation that we find ourselves in. YouTube said that I am spreading medical misinformation with that video. They took the video off. They also gave me a strike on the channel alongside a warning, and I am at risk of losing my channel. A second warning and the channel is gone completely. So what I did is I made a new channel where I'm going to be moving all the content from this channel. Please do subscribe to the new channel. I will leave the link in the description below, and also it should be here at the top somewhere. Please subscribe to the new channel, because there will be a point where I will stop publishing videos on this channel and I'll publish videos only on the new channel. So I'll give you guys some time so that all my subscribers can move on to my new channel. Thank you so much everyone, thanks! And now, let's get started. When 5-year-old LeeAnna Warner arrived home from a day out with her family, the first thing she wanted to do was go to her friend's house to tell her all about her day. Her mother, Kaelin, tried to convince her to go inside and take a nap instead, but LeeAnna was really persistent. She pleaded to be allowed to go down the street to her best friend's house, and Kaelin hesitated at first, but she eventually agreed. She told her daughter she should come back home by 5 p.m. and she watched her skipping off down the street. It was 4:30 p.m. on Saturday, June 14th, 2003, and it was the last time Kaelin would see her daughter. LeeAnna was an outgoing, fearless and extremely energetic girl, and she was well known in their Chisholm, Minnesota neighborhood. Chisholm was a small town of around 5,000 residents, and it was seen as a quiet and safe place to raise a family. LeeAnna was best friend with a child who lived down the street from the Warners, and she would walk to her house to visit her on a daily basis. Chris and Kaelin Warner were comfortable enough letting their daughter go by herself. The walk took less than 2 minutes and didn't require crossing any streets. LeeAnna was the kind of child who liked frequently to check in with her mother. She was constantly running back and forth between her mother and her friend's house. Kaelin was busy doing a few things around the house, so it was around 5:30 p.m. before she realized that LeeAnna hadn't returned home yet. She walked down to LeeAnna's friend's house to see if she was still there, and was really surprised to learn they hadn't seen her all day. The family had just returned from a shopping trip. They weren't home when LeeAnna went to visit. Several neighbors had seen LeeAnna knock on the front door, but she left once she realized that no one was home. She then headed back in the direction of her own house, and the neighbors assumed that she was going home. Trying not to panic, Kaelin began searching the neighborhood. No one knew where LeeAnna was, and the number of people looking for her grew with each home Kaelin visited. Soon, most of the neighborhood was out searching for the missing child. Everyone expected to find her at any minute, but by 8:30 p.m., it was clear that something was seriously wrong. Kaelin called the Chisholm police department and reported her daughter missing. Although there was no evidence that foul play had taken place, the fact that LeeAnna was so young was a concern to the police. They immediately launched an intensive search of the area, and the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Investigation sent out a statewide alert that a young child was missing. They did not issue an Amber Alert because there was nothing leading them to believe an abduction actually took place. The search continued overnight, but investigators were unable to find anything to help them locate Leeanna. Sunday was Father's Day, but there was very little to celebrate in Chisholm. Hundreds of police officers and volunteers continued searching for the missing girl, and members of her family quickly had flyers printed up and began distributing them throughout the area. Representatives from 6 different law enforcement agencies participated in the search, and the local elementary school was transformed into a makeshift command center. Searchers combed through every single building, yard, garage and shed within a 4-mile radius of where Leeanna was last seen. They checked inside parked cars, under porches and even in garbage cans. They made sure to check every single space where a small child might fit. There was a chance Leeanna might have been scared by all the searchers and tried to hide herself from view. Despite their thoroughness, they found no trace whatsoever of Leeanna. Bloodhounds were also brought in, and they were able to track Leeanna's scent from her home to a shallow lake 2 blocks away. Worried that she might have ended up in the water, searchers scoured the lake and surrounding marshland. Search crews from the St. Louis County Sheriff's Office arrived with their hovercraft to assist in searching the water, and volunteers on ATVs could be heard buzzing around several areas near the lakefront. They found nothing that indicated Leeanna was at the lake, and it appeared that the bloodhounds may have picked up on an earlier trail. Leeanna and a friend had gone to the lake the day before Leeanna went missing. The girl's mother told the police she walked down to the lake with them so they could release some turtles back into the water. Police later announced they were confident Leeanna was not going to be found in the water. By Monday morning, investigators still had no idea what happened to Leeanna. Detectives had gone door to door in the neighborhood interviewing residents and asking if they remembered seeing anything unusual the day Leeanna went missing. But they still had no solid evidence of any foul play. No one had seen or heard anything that led them to believe the child was abducted, and police had no crime scene to investigate. They told the media that the case was still classified as a missing child investigation, but stressed they were unable to rule out the possibility of a kidnapping. Until they could come up with more information, they weren't going to rule out anything. Chris and Kaelin attended a press conference on Monday and made a tearful plea for the return of their daughter. They believed that Leeanna had been abducted, and they said they would not stop searching until they found her. Police told the media they received more than 300 tips in the first couple of days of the investigation, but had been unable to develop any solid lead. The search area was expanded on Tuesday, and investigators were optimistic that Leeanna was still alive. Although she had been missing for nearly 72 hours, the temperature was mild and there was no rain. Even if she was lost outside, it was possible for her to survive under these conditions, but they needed to find her soon. In addition to searchers on foot and ATVs, several helicopter crews were dispatched to conduct aerial searches. Although Leeanna never strayed far from home before, volunteers extended their search to include areas outside the Chisholm city, just in case the 5-year-old somehow managed to wander off further than expected. Once again, the day ended without finding any trace of the little girl. On Tuesday, investigators admitted that they were no closer to finding Leeanna than they had been on the night she disappeared. They were frustrated by the lack of progress in the case and recognized that if she had been lost outside, her survival at this point was unlikely. Although search teams would continue to scour the area for any sign of Leeanna, detectives began to focus on the possibility of foul play. They interviewed anyone who had been in recent contact with the child, and they began the process of checking up on all the registered sex offenders in the area. There was a jazz festival taking place in Chisholm during the time when Leeanna was last seen, and several groups of bikers arrived around the same time to attend a large motorcycle rally. Although detectives had no reason to suspect that anyone from these events was involved in Leeanna's disappearance, they weren't taking any chances. They gathered motel guest registries for the weekend and obtained the names of anyone who was staying in a local campground. They went through surveillance tapes taken from local businesses looking for anything that might help lead them to the missing girl. It was a long and tedious process, and they were unable to find any evidence related to their case. As the investigation entered its second week, police hinted that Leeanna was most likely abducted. They told the media that there was no way a small child would be able to remain hidden for this length of time without having help from an adult, and they believed that she was most likely not in the Chisholm area anymore. Detectives admitted they felt from the beginning that she was taken by someone, but they felt the need to thoroughly investigate the possibility she might have wandered off. That theory was eliminated after the extensive search indicated that she was no longer in the area. Due to the size of the neighborhood and the amount of people who were around the day Leeanna disappeared, investigators had a hard time believing that no one had seen anything. Convinced that someone in the area knew something about what happened, they announced that a $10,000 reward was being offered for information leading to Leeanna's recovery. They also asked residents to watch out for anyone they knew who suddenly began showing changes in behavior that might indicate they were involved in the crime, or signs to look for included increased alcohol or drug abuse, drastic changes in appearance, and unexpected time away from work. In August 2003, Matthew James Curtis, a 24-year-old resident of Chisholm, was arrested for possessing child pornography. Although there was nothing linking him to Leeanna, he was questioned by detectives on several occasions. He denied having anything to do with her disappearance. Investigators searched his residence and conducted forensic tests on his vehicle, but they found nothing to indicate Leeanna had ever been in his home or car. He was later found dead on an apparent suicide, one day before he was actually supposed to appear in court on the child pornography charges. Police told the media that his death had no impact on their investigation. He was dismissed as a suspect after police received the results of the forensic testing. They do not believe his suicide had anything to do with Leeanna. In the first 50 days of the investigation, law enforcement investigated 1,300 tips without developing any solid leads. Experienced officers said they had never seen a case where there was so little to go on. It was as if Leeanna had simply vaporized. They had absolutely no evidence at all. They extensively interviewed all of her family members, neighbors, and friends. They could find nothing connecting anyone to Leeanna's disappearance, which led them to believe that she had been kidnapped by a stranger. Stranger abductions, thankfully, rarely take place. They are very hard to investigate, and solving one usually requires a person with information about the crime coming forward to tell police what they know. Keeping this in mind, police again made a public plea for help. Several people came forward early in the investigation to report seeing strange vehicles in the area on the day that Leeanna went missing. Police looked into all the reports but were unable to link any to the missing girl. There were several events going on at the time, and the strange cars likely belonged to someone attending one of them. Chris and Kaelin suspected from the beginning that Leeanna was kidnapped, but having police confirm their worst fears was still a shock. They knew that successfully recovering the victim of stranger abduction was rare, but they were comforted by the fact that Leeanna's body had not been found. They continued to hope that she was still alive, and they were willing to do whatever necessary to find her. In the earliest stages of the investigation, there were some people who were extremely critical of Kaelin's failure to call police until Leeanna had been missing for over 3 hours. Although in hindsight she wished she had called sooner, Kaelin defended her actions that night. Like most residents of Chisholm, she had always had an illusion of safety that is common in people who are insulated from danger. Crime was viewed as an urban problem, not something that would happen on the streets of their neighborhood. Leeanna had so many friends that Kaelin kept thinking that her daughter would be behind the next door she knocked on. By the time she realized that Leeanna truly was missing, hours had gone by. Even after she called the police, she had trouble believing that the little girl was really gone. Chris and Kaelin made another public plea on the 1-year anniversary of Leeanna's disappearance. They believed that she was still alive and hoped that the person who took her might feel guilty about what they did and finally bring her home, or at least contact them so they would know she was okay. Chris, who was a firefighter, had taken a 6-month leave of absence from his job when his daughter first went missing, and he still had days where he found it difficult to get out of bed. He felt an enormous amount of guilt that he wasn't able to protect his little girl. In July 2004, Chris and Kaelin worked with a private investigator and 200 volunteers to conduct the first massive search for Leeanna in nearly a year. Bob Hills, a well-known private detective, explained that they intended to cover a 12 square miles radius around the area where Leeanna was last seen. Volunteers were shown diagrams of human bones and warned that they were no longer looking for the Leeanna shown in photographs. If the child were still alive, they weren't going to find her in the places they were looking. This was a search for her remains. It was difficult for her parents to hear this, but they were participating in the search because they wanted to find closure one way or another. Volunteers spent 2 days scouring wooded areas for anything related to Leeanna. A piece of her denim dress, a shred of her orange underwear, perhaps the gold hard necklace she had been wearing. They looked for any strange mounds or areas of disturbed earth that might indicate a grave. Chris and Kaelin worked side by side with the other members of the search party, praying for answers, yet not wanting to believe that Leeanna was no longer alive. In the end, they didn't find any evidence of the little girl. Volunteers would continue to hold searches throughout the Chisholm area, but they had no luck finding anything that led them closer to Leeanna. When deer hunting season began, hunters were asked to keep an eye out for anything unusual in the deep woods. They too failed to find anything. No one wanted to admit it, but it was clear that Leeanna's case was starting to go cold. While Leeanna's disappearance was front-page news in the Chisholm area, it failed to attract the attention of the national news media. In an effort to publicize the case, Chris and Kaelin appeared on Maury in 2006. They mentioned that Leeanna was acting somewhat odd in the weeks leading up to her disappearance. One day, she returned home from playing with friends carrying a doll case. Inside were several Barbie dolls and articles of doll clothing, none of which Chris and Kaelin had seen before. When they asked Leeanna where the items had come from, she insisted that they were given to her by a little old lady. They gave this information to police after Leeanna went missing, but police didn't believe the items had any relevance to the case. One morning, about 2 weeks before she disappeared, Leeanna wasn't in her bed when Kaelin went in to wake her up. She found her daughter sleeping on the floor in her closet. Leeanna told her parents that there had been monsters outside her bedroom window and she was hiding from them. Her parents checked outside the window to see if there were any footprints underneath it, but nothing appeared to be disturbed. The next time Leeanna mentioned it, they promised her that there was no way the monsters could get her. A week before she went missing, Leeanna made a comment that disturbed her parents. She packed some of her things in a small suitcase and then announced that she wanted to go live with her new family. Unsure what she was talking about, her parents asked her about this new family, but Leeanna offered no further details and didn't bring the subject up again. Police were aware of these incidents, but it was hard to tell if they were related to her disappearance or if they were just random thoughts from the mind of a 5-year-old. They were unable to come up with any evidence that someone had been giving LeeAnna gifts in an attempt to groom her in some way, and finally concluded that it was unlikely. No one in the neighborhood could recall seeing LeeAnna talking to anyone unfamiliar. LeeAnna had been missing for over 18 years now, and investigators still have no idea what happened to the little girl on her walk home that summer afternoon. They do believe there are people out there that can shed some light on this mystery and provide them with the information they need to finally solve this case. Chris and Kaelin have never stopped searching for their daughter and want nothing more than to finally be able to bring her home. It is said that after LeeAnna's disappearance, Kaelin would always leave the porch light on so it would guide LeeAnna when she would come home. Although the parents moved from Chisholm, even in her new house, Kaelin is still keeping the porch light on in the hopes LeeAnna would turn up one day. LeeAnna Warner was 5 years old when she went missing in 2003. She has dark brown eyes and brown hair, and at the time of her disappearance she was 3 feet 2 inches tall and weighed 48 pounds. She has a dimple on the back of her left shoulder and a wart above her left ankle. She was last seen wearing a sleeveless blue denim dress with an attached belt, a bright orange Hanes panties, and a red garnet earring shaped like a flower. Both of her ears are pierced, but she was only wearing an earring in her right ear on the day she disappeared. She was not wearing any shoes or socks. If you have any information about LeeAnna, please call the Chisholm Police Department at 218-254-7915. LeeAnna was last seen walking home from a friend's house, which was a block and a half from her own residence. She had gone to play with a friend at 4:30 p.m., but no one was home at her friend's house. She was last seen walking on Southwest 2nd or 3rd Street westbound between 5 and 5:15 p.m. LeeAnna's mother, Tiffany Kaelin Whitaker, more commonly known as Kaelin Warner, began looking for her at 5:30 p.m. enlisting neighborhood children to help. When the search turned up no sign of LeeAnna's whereabouts, Kaelin called the police between 8:40 and 9 p.m. This is where I'm having an issue. Why wait 3 hours to report your child missing, especially a 5-year-old? I am also having an issue with letting a 5-year-old walk on her own to a friend's house, even if he was only 2 minutes away. The main concern is that LeeAnna would have to take a corner, and after that corner she would be out of sight of her mom, who would be in front of the house watching her. After LeeAnna takes the corner, her mom can't see her anymore. I mean, I do understand that it seemed to be a safe neighborhood. There were different times, but still, from my point of view, it's not okay. And how would LeeAnna even know what time is 30 minutes or when was 5:30 when she was meant to be home? She was 5. How would she know to tell the time difference? How would she know to, tell the time? An extensive search by authorities, which lasted several days and included helicopters and bloodhounds, failed to locate LeeAnna. While there is no evidence that she was kidnapped, authorities have been leaning towards that view, feeling they would have found her quickly if she would just wander off. Tracker dogs traced her scent to the roadside edge but lost it after that. So, if we are to take the tracker dog's findings and them losing her scent on the roadside edge, that would mean she disappeared from there, and the only possible way would be in a vehicle. An unidentified man in his mid-30s was seen on foot in the neighborhood at about the time of LeeAnna's disappearance. He was approximately 5'10" tall and 155 pounds, with a dark colored tattoo of a star or sun on his right arm. A maroon and blue two-door Cadillac driven by an African-American man in his 20s or 30s with a bald or shaven head, and an older model rusty brown pickup truck driven by a Caucasian man with black curly hair were also seen in the area. Neither the vehicles or their drivers have been identified. It is unknown whether any of them had to do with LeeAnna's apparent abduction. This would make sense with the tracker dog's findings. LeeAnna could have been taken into one of these vehicles, lured away somehow. Matthew James Curtis, 24 years old at the time, was arrested in Chisholm in August 2003 for possession of child pornography charges which were unrelated to LeeAnna's case. He was interrogated several times about a possible connection to LeeAnna. However, due to the nature of his alleged crime, Curtis was found dead September 2003, the day before he was supposed to appear in court on the child pornography charge. Police say he suffocated himself with a plastic bag and his body was found in a gravel pit 8 or 9 miles outside of Chisholm. The investigation into his death has been closed and ruled a suicide. There has been speculation that Curtis didn't commit suicide and was in fact murdered in a possible revenge or gangland-style killing, and his remains were then staged to make it look like he took his own life. There is no evidence to support this theory, however. Authorities initially suspected that Curtis was involved in LeeAnna's disappearance and they processed his pickup truck for DNA samples. They couldn't find any evidence that the child had ever been in the vehicle, and it was decided that Curtis was not connected to LeeAnna's apparent abduction. Police suspect foul play in LeeAnna's disappearance. LeeAnna's parents were not asked to take lie detector tests and are not suspects in their daughter's apparent abduction. They have both been previously divorced, and LeeAnna's father, Christopher, had domestic problems with his ex-wife. They both sought mutual restraining orders and he alleged that she had threatened Kaelin and LeeAnna. These difficulties occurred several years before LeeAnna's disappearance, however, and are not thought to be related to it. The Warners moved to Chisholm just a few months before LeeAnna went missing. After LeeAnna vanished, a child's footprints were found near Longear Lake, a shallow lake near where she was last seen. Investigators pumped some of the water out of the lake in late October 2003 to search for any evidence relating to her case, but they found nothing important and had to stop pumping because the lake was freezing over. They began a new search of Chisholm in the summer of 2004, looking for the child's remains, but to no result. No further searches are scheduled for the foreseeable future. LeeAnna's parents believe she's still alive and was possibly abducted for the purposes of black market adoption. LeeAnna enjoys playing with dolls and riding her bicycle and is described as an outgoing, precocious and fearless child. She had been known to wander and her survival instincts are said to be quite advanced for her age. Her case remains unsolved to this day. There was one thing specifically which honestly truly disturbed me. A few weeks before her disappearance, LeeAnna came home with that box of Barbie dolls, remember? Given to her by what she said, a little old lady. I think the most likely scenario is that she indeed was abducted. The old lady was probably part of it. I mean, a 5-year-old would trust an old lady because they are harmless, right? You'd never think an old lady would try and lure a kid away. Probably the old lady gave her the box of dolls to befriend her and make LeeAnna trust her. Also, seeing an old lady on the street talking to a child, it wouldn't be so suspicious to the neighbors, would it? Compared to, let's say, seeing a strange man talking to LeeAnna. That would probably raise some questions. However, if you see an old lady on the street, you don't really think that, oh my God, she can do something like this. Then I think that at the same time someone else was watching LeeAnna in the night whilst she was asleep, possibly to check if she sleeps alone or maybe she's with someone else in her room, with her mom or one of her parents, and that's probably why LeeAnna said that she saw monsters at the window. She probably saw the shadow of someone who was watching her. I also think the group or individuals that abducted her, they were watching her for weeks before they actually abducted her. They probably learned all about her daily walks, if any adult was with her or watching her when she went outside to play. They probably knew as well who she was visiting, who her friends were, and I think they struck on that particular day because they saw the window of opportunity. Leanna's friend wasn't home when she knocked on the door. They were out shopping. According to her mom, Leanna left her shoes in front of the friend's door. That, to me, could indicate someone distracted Leanna and she forgot to put her shoes back on. Perhaps someone was shouting from the car, or someone nearby told her something or showed her something, you know, anything to distract her. Maybe it was the same old lady who returned and called her to show her something in her car. Maybe the old lady said, oh, come on, I have some more dolls for you, come and check them out. The point is, in the weeks before her disappearance, Leanna changed her behavior and also said things which were unlike her, going with a new family. It's very possible that all these things were mentioned to Leanna by a stranger. Maybe they said, we will take you to your new family where you will have so many Barbie dolls just like this, so many friends, you can eat as many sweets as you want. These kind of things to a 5-year-old would sound like heaven. Again, Leanna mentioning a new family makes me believe that she could have been abducted for purposes of black market adoption, which would mean most likely that she is still alive today. Even if this is the case, she would probably have no idea she is Leanna. Thank you so much everyone for watching. This video was in fact requested by a Facebook users from one of the groups I am in. So guys, if you do have any requests into any particular cases that you'd like me to see covering or check it out, just let me know in the comments below. Also, you can contact me through my Facebook page. I also have an email address where you can send me an email. So if there are any cases in particular that you feel like they are not covered in the media, I would love to focus my coverage of less known cases rather than cases which are just about everywhere mentioned. Thank you so much for watching. Please take care and stay safe, and I will see you in my next video. By the way, don't forget, give this video a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Either way, it's free, doesn't cost you anything, and it really helps me with the engagement and with the YouTube platform. YouTube will be pushing my video around more when the engagement is going up. So again, thanks guys, bye!